Welcome to Influential Entrepreneurs, bringing you interviews with elite business leaders and experts, sharing tips and strategies for elevating your business to the next level. Here's your host, Mike Saunders.
Hello and welcome to this episode of our program. This is Mike Saunders with Marketing Huddle, and today we have with us Andrew Kaiser, who is the founder and president of the Kaizen Company. Welcome to the program, Andrew.
Thank you, Mike. Good to be here.
Hey, to get us started, you were a recent recipient of the Inc. 5000 award. Tell us a little bit about that. Was that your first year, or was this a building on multiple years of success?
That was our first year. It was the first year that we had applied and really gotten on their radar.
You know, that's it's neat because when you said a unique word, applied, because I think a lot of people think, well, you fill in the blanks and you get a designation, but the Inc. 5000 is verified and it's paperwork and numbers. I mean, it's not just a give me designation. So that's a super designation that you guys were a part of. Would you say in the last year or two leading up to that, was there some type of a tipping point that in your firm you saw, we started doing or we started expanding, and then that's what caused us to be able to, succeed at that level?
Yeah, absolutely. We had tripled in size basically over the preceding year to 2 years prior to getting the award, getting nominated and named on the Inc. 5000 list. We have been in business for a dozen years now, and we had essentially reached a kind of a crisis point. We weren't in risk of going out of business, but we were definitely running out of business, if you will. So we weren't. It wasn't an existential risk, but it was definitely dropping revenues. We knew something needed to change. Ultimately, it led to my, having to buy out one of my business partners who saw things a little bit differently than we did in terms of the direction of the company. And we, the others of us who are partners, made the strategic decision that we would start leading more initiatives and proposals. We do work with primarily government clients. Management consulting work, primarily internationally, and where most of our first several years we were a subcontractor to larger firms, we decided to go for it and really start submitting proposals as the prime. And there's a learning curve there, and then we learned and started winning, and it has led to some somewhat explosive growth.
Yeah, I love that that layout there. You didn't necessarily pivot where you went to a full new direction. You kept doing what you were doing, but you just it's almost like a new direction in the sense that why should we be that backup singer? Let's be the lead singer, or here we're going to be the front runner. And of course, with those procurements and those RFPs comes a learning curve. You can't just fill in the blanks and throw it back to them and hope that you get it. So that's obviously when you describe that, and when you say you tripled in the last year or two, those things were paying off, and it's never just a flip of the switch. It's a learning process. So give me an idea. What's the focus of your company? You mentioned international. So what does the Kaizen Company do?
Yeah, so we work almost exclusively internationally. We do have some domestic based work, but it's all focused on international clients. So we are kind of a mixture of international economic development and management consulting. So the three core services that we provide are management consulting or organizational development with a focus on helping international organizations, be they government, private sector entities, or nonprofits, to really run their organizations well, strategy, operations, finance, etc. So that's one of our three core services. Second one is something we call professional communities, or communities of practice, as they're more commonly called, which is effectively peer-to-peer learning networks for the idea that professional peers can learn as much or more from each other as they can from outside experts if given a structured environment for doing that, and that information technology can really facilitate that. And then the third thing we do, and our kind of biggest growth area, is in the area of innovation and entrepreneurship. We run a technical assistance facilitator where we are working with innovative startups around the world who have received grant funding from the U.S. government because they're doing highly interesting work that, in this one, it's in particular in the area of food security, supporting innovators who have technologies that can really help improve agricultural outputs. And we provide management consulting to those awardees to help them grow and scale their businesses. And we also run a startup incubators where we identify innovators and provide them a little bit of seed capital and then support them to grow their businesses, all of which have some kind of, there's social enterprises, have some social as well as economic goal.
Yeah, that's really neat. And what caught a couple things caught my attention there. So I want to go deeper on the peer-to-peer, and I like that concept because it's kind of like you're facilitating and guiding and encouraging, and sometimes you learn better a concept that you're learning when you're teaching it. So it seems to me like this peer-to-peer, you're teaching some concepts and then you're kind of handed the baton off to that group so that they can learn internally, which then helps them each as they're teaching one another, as they're networking, masterminding. It really helps to solidify something rather than I'm sitting in a seminar or a training, I learned this and where did my notes go? Is that kind of what you're seeing with that peer-to-peer?
Absolutely. Senior executives or leaders of organizations want to learn from each other, and who can do it, who can teach them better than those who have been through it, before, or that are going through it at the exact same time.
Yeah. And are these peers in different industries, different companies, so that they can learn from, the same principle, but applied in a different modality or a different industry?
Yeah, so there are different types. There are some where they're all in similar sectors, but obviously there are certain things they're not going to talk about. They're not going to talk about their competitive advantages. So, for example, in Jordan for several years, and it still continues to this day, the Kingdom of Jordan, there was a group of industrialists, and the professional community was all about supporting them to better work together and learn from each other regarding their environmental impacts, regarding how they were building and improving and making their factories more efficient. And on the one hand, there were some firms in there that were in similar sectors, so they were competing against each other. And so they would, say, hey, look, I'm not willing to talk about this or that with, other competitors. At the same time, they did agree to come together around and discuss things that they were willing to share and learn from each other. So, for example, the leaders of those firms would do, every couple of weeks a tour of one of the factories in the group, and you could only actually attend the tours if you were willing to open up your own factory to the other CEOs to come in and see what you were doing well, what was working, what wasn't. That's just one example. Obviously, there are several others. Some of them are across sectors, and some of them, there's always got to be one common element that unifies the group, and it's the reason and the focus of the community.
Yeah, I love that, and I'm certain that there have been some touchy moments where you wish you could get something done, but this party didn't want to disclose this piece, but yet when you can bring them together, I think it's a great, kind of that masterminding effect. So that I love that concept. The other thing I noticed you said was innovation and entrepreneurship, and I know you were talking in the realm of smaller business and entrepreneurs, but with your work in other entities like what you've mentioned, do you ever run into intrapreneurship?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. We, try to encourage it wherever possible.
Yeah, sure.
A lot of the times, especially I would say there when we're talking about or when we're working with bigger government agencies, and you've got the bureaucracy, which effectively, works against entrepreneurship, innovation, change. And, most of the contexts in which we're working are international contexts and mostly developing countries, not all. But in developing countries, some of the problems are, what things that we might consider here quite basic, right? And when we worked in Iraq in the early years after the war. Really during the war, quite frankly, and working with several government agencies where they had just had 30 years of Saddam Hussein's rule, and there was absolutely no During Saddam Hussein's regime, no interest in change or innovation or improvement.
Mm-hmm.
So there was really just a lapse of education, and more than the education, the mindsets. So we were really trying to unlock the natural abilities that all of us have to identify and make improvements to our existing jobs. Our very name Kaizen means, ongoing improvement, or we like to define it as continuous or ongoing improvement at all levels at all times. And the person on the factory floor has as much or more value to add when it comes to how to improve his or her job as does the CEO, right? They're going to know what makes sense and what doesn't in terms of their workstation, if you ask them.
I would venture to say that could be a very tough sell to the upper management to bring the idea that that frontline worker may have some innovative ideas for them to actually listen to it or consider it or implement it. Is there some approach that you take there to make sure both parties can see the ultimate end?
Absolutely. So whenever we are working with, there's a big difference between smaller, typically more nimble organizations, although not always, and larger organizations. So if you're talking about larger entities, we will not even work with an organization unless the leadership has bought in and supported our being there. And because leadership, as I think most folks know, right, if you don't have leadership commitment, it's the one predicator of whether any kind of change will be successful. So when we're working with a large organization, the first thing we do is talk to the head of the organization and or his or her top deputies and say, look, what is your vision for this organization? What do you want it to achieve? Is it achieving all that you want it to achieve? I've never heard anyone say yes. Mm-hmm. And they say no, and then you say, well, how would you like support to really unleash the potential of your line managers, your rank and file professionals who are, really the ones that are dealing with your customers, the ones that are working through the processes that you've set and the management systems that are required, et cetera. How would you like for us to work with them and create a means through which they can really look for ways to improve and do what you're trying to do in your vision, better, faster, cheaper? And to reduce the burden on you, but not completely eliminate it, because if you don't support it, it will never happen. We ask you as the leader of the organization, every so often to really help, hear out what's happening in terms of changes that are being proposed by your rank and file and help remove the bottlenecks that are stopping them from making progress towards the goal. And this is the important part, the goal and the vision that you have set as the leader of the organization.
The interesting thing with what you just said there was you didn't say to the upper management, when you do this and if you do this, then here's what will happen, and doesn't that sound good? You posed those outcomes as compelling questions that, quite frankly, you would have to say yes to. You said, how would you like to have, and of course you would say yes to that. Why would you say no? So you might just do that subconsciously or just in the matter of course of how you speak, but that's a very powerful approach where they're agreeing to something, they're seeing it because you're asking them a question, how would you like, or what would you think about? Because that creates a pull attraction rather than here's this outside person or company saying you ought to do this and let's get it going. And then they're like, well, let's just, I don't know.
No, absolutely. It's a bit of a Socratic method, if you will, right? And it's by purpose designed for them to own the answer, right? You're wanting them to own the solution and lead the solution. Any good consultant will tell you, right? If it's not your idea necessarily, it's the idea of the organization you're helping. You're just helping them package it, improve upon it, et cetera. But if it's coming from them, they're going to own it. They're going to believe in it. They're going to support its actually happening.
Exactly. Hey, so tell me about your new initiative, Kaizen Ventures.
This is a big one for us. We are a social enterprise. We have been growing quite a bit recently, although, profit margins in our industry of development assistance are razor thin. Our vision as a company is not that of a typical kind of government contractor, if you will. We do want to give back. We do want to have wide-scale impact in this world. And we are big advocates of the idea that if you can solve a human need profitably, you can scale it infinitely. And really what that means in the whole industry and the field of development has been leaning this way for some time. It's going there increasingly, less about, just doing good, but doing it really well, to borrow the tagline of an industry kind of association that supports all the players in this industry. The idea being that, that we really want to, this isn't totally charity, right? Obviously, development assistance professionals want to do good things in the world, but the more we can do with fewer resources, then the more we can achieve worldwide in terms of, human dignity, human lives, promoting democracy, economic growth, these types of things. And so Kaizen Ventures is an initiative through which we are actively looking for innovative approaches to development that have the potential to scale through markets. And we are planning on investing, a good portion of our profits into ideas that we think have that potential to really put our money where our mouth is and use that as leverage for social impact investors and others.
I love it. I think that's awesome. And probably if you were to assess each one of your potential social enterprise opportunities, you could probably draw a line to, we thought of this because we were in this country or this organization or this, project, and it introduced us to, so it becomes all interconnected. And I think that's really neat because you're layering in on your international focus and work, and now here comes another way. It's kind of like how, you see sometimes on, the Shark Tank shows, hey, I went over here, I did this project, and I noticed this, the Tom Shoes story, kids in a third world country needed shoes, so we're going to go back and create a social impact that way. So I love that approach. I think that's super powerful because it's much more than just capitalism and profit. So that's just wonderful. So at this point, where can people learn more about Kaizen Ventures and also your firm, the Kaizen Company?
Well, our website, obviously, it's a long one. It's www.thekaizencompany.com, THEKAIZEN company spelled out .com. And they're welcome to call us too. We're still a relatively small group based in Washington, D.C., right downtown, and we are definitely interested in talking with and hearing from individuals, organizations that share our goals and vision for a better future for the world.
Excellent. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for your time. Congratulations on all your success, but also the impact that you're making in the work you're doing. So congratulations, and thank you for taking time today.
Thank you very much.
You've been listening to Influential Entrepreneurs with Mike Saunders. To learn more about the resources mentioned on today's show or listen to past episodes, visit www.influentialentrepreneursradio.com.